Well, it is 4 o'clock, and that's the scheduled kickoff time for our meeting. We have one gentleman who's not here yet, who does sit on the authority. Here in the corner, he may have gone to the other building location, maybe. We're not sure, but we do have a quorum here, so we can go ahead and get started. And if Gary comes in, then certainly we'll have him come up and participate as well. And first of all, welcome to the Carlisle Borough Sewer System Authority Board meeting for July. We have these meetings quarterly. And I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Ed Hazel. I'm the chairman of this committee, or this authority. And what I thought we'd do is kind of go around the front table here, because we do have quite a few people here from the public to witness or participate in this meeting. We'll go ahead and go around the room real quick, around this front table, who we are and what our role is in this process. And then we'll go from there. So we'll start with
Marita Abram, Director of Water Resources for the Borough.
Hi, Jason Cohen, Director of Finance.
Melissa Denny, the Senior Operator at the Waste Treatment Facility.
Paul Seeger, a member of the authority.
Megan Ingerson, Vice Chair.
I'm Kurt Stevens. I'm with the authority. Brian Swift, I'm GOT, consulting engineer. Hubert Gilroy from Arts and Law, as solicitor for the authority.
And just want to welcome back Kurt. Kurt was on the authority. He unfortunately was involved. His apartment was one of the apartments that burned on the east side of town there several months ago. He moved out. He's now back on the authority, so we welcome him back to the authority. So anyway, the meeting's called to order, and then the next item on the agenda is for public comment. So at this point in time, we will solicit any questions or comments or anything from those of you that are out there.
Good afternoon. My name is Hilda Vasquez. I'm here for representing my community, Country Minor West. It's in Middlesex Township. The only white request when we start all processing is transparency in this processing, because this situation is very dedicated for residents in Middlesex Township.
Excuse me, we need more chairs across the hallway.
There's actually some in
There's chairs.
the room right now.
There should be some back there as well. Sorry.
More than there.
Yes, I can. With transparency. Ladies start?
And I was just reminded too, if you want to make a statement or ask a question or whatever, if you could please state your name and your address for the record, so that we can record that and put that into the minutes. We'd appreciate it. So go ahead and get that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
My name is Hilda Vasquez. I live in Country Minor West. It's a Middlesex Township. I'm here because my community is very affected for this data center. But my principal request when we start all this process, because I know that now we start the process, we need transparency, because we found I found a lot of irregularity in Middlesex Township about water, sewer, and everything about the MTNA. Thank you.
My name is Jason Bullock. I reside at 19 Goldenrod Drive, Carlisle. It's Middlesex Township as well, about 3,000 feet away from this data center that is being built. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I rise in opposition of this entire project, so I'm not big bias here to you, but I'm listening to backup alarms through my walls already. I know these facilities are considerably louder, so I'm opposed to it. Just show of hands real quick. Anybody familiar with the article that was written in the Cheyenne State Daily about contamination in a wastewater system? Familiar with that, sir? Nobody else? So I would encourage everybody to go read this, but I'm just going to read the beginning of it. It doesn't sound great. Cheyenne announced Thursday it suspended taking wastewater associated with data center systems after a med contractor contaminated the city's wastewater system, prompting months of cleanup. It is a very, very unpleasant surprise to the city council. That's how it begins. It goes into some details. I brought this up at a Middlesex Township meeting recently, and the development crew did not have an answer for how they were going to mitigate a similar crisis. As far as scale goes, this project is a $15 billion project. It is roughly 15 times the project that was mentioned in the Cheyenne State Daily. I don't think that there's any confusion about what happened here during the construction process. They emitted a rare bacteria, which I can't pronounce. You can go read that in Cheyenne. Let me get you the bibliography here. My phone is not functioning today, unfortunately, but cowboystatedaily.com is where it was published. But I read some of the article for those folks. They decided to tell me, the developer, or whoever represents the developer, or whatever they are, decided to tell me that it was a different system. Well, I went and did some research. It is not. There's a closed loop cooling system very similar to the one that's being installed at PAX 1. So this is an unmitigated hazard. It is and does pose a threat to the general public. This has made people ill to the point of death. The specific bacteria, and it is a rare bacteria. It's not something we find very common in nature. So it came from this process. They're not confused about that. As everybody tries to blow smoke on that, it's been defined as the hazard. Now, it didn't get into the drinking water in Cheyenne, thank goodness. But what it did do is get into the irrigation water that they were using. So there have been interesting outbreaks of diseases and stuff tied to different types of produce. I don't know if it's related or not, but I would suggest caution.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lori Fenn. I live in North Middleton, 3 West Mulberry Drive, Carlisle. And I'm gonna just read some things. I know some of this is water, some of it's sewer, but it is connected. Before any large customer receives service, municipalities should perform all the engineering studies to evaluate supply, treatment capacity, drought resistance, and impacts on existing customers. Has a groundwater study been completed? Citizens need to know levels of the aquifers before the industry starts drawing water from wells and groundwater. In Nova, Northern Virginia, they're using the Potomac River and reservoirs. They're not tapping into groundwater. If municipalities' wells dry up, or if citizens' wells dry, will the municipality or the industry dig new ones for them? And I wanted to ask if our authority is looking at this from a narrow perspective or a broad perspective, as data centers push into all kinds of areas from Cumberland, Perry, York, Lancaster. Has hydrologists been consulted? PAX 1 is approved for 400,000 gallons of water per day and 277,000 gallons per day for wastewater. It will have 16 to 18 buildings and 4.5 million square feet of development for buildings. How much is the second well going to cost? The infrastructure to carry this water? What if the discharge water grows with the additional water requests that are expected in the future? Boiling Springs Lake water breaches are already low and we're in a drought. Will the taxpayers be stuck with this bill? I know the wastewater facility is supposed to be growing. I've heard that it's for the biosolids program. But is it also for additional gallons for what that might be discharged from the data centers? And who's going to be stuck with that bill? Comparing it to some other locations, there is a facility in Roanoke, Virginia, 3 hyperscale data centers with approval to supply 2 million gallons of water per day and wastewater at 570,000 gallons per day. So how can these numbers be so different when PAX 1, which is supposed to have 16 to 18 buildings, is only asking for 400,000 gallons of water per day? Roanoke Water Authority They have approved 2 million gallons a day, but the industry is saying that it could climb to 8 million gallons a day based on future expansion, and they are asking Roanoke to put in other water sources so that they are able to grow. You know, do we really have a clear understanding of what is really required by this industry? We need to ask them to provide information on data centers and their discharges in Virginia. I know in Virginia, they have water treatment facilities that are doing additional things. They're cleaning the water differently. They're putting additional chemicals in there to clean them. And when we do ask them at the meetings, they're just like, well, we don't really test for those. You know, like they're just kind of burying their heads in the sand, not necessarily realizing that there are hazards in this wastewater that the data centers are gonna be producing that's gonna come back into our water. And I drink public water, I'm not on a well, but I'm also concerned because if they don't have capacity in the wastewater system, are they gonna come back and say, hey, can we dump this into Conagwinnett? They're trying to clean it and dump it in northern Pennsylvania up the Susquehanna River. And they, in my opinion, they know what's coming. They're just not telling the full story. They're hiding the details. I've lived in Virginia for 20 years. I have watched this industry in Prince William County grow from 5 million to 88 million square feet of data centers in less than 5 years approved. They're not even all built because the power is gonna take decades to reach them. So as we're considering jumping on this bandwagon and on this train, know that we're falling behind Virginia, but we have to protect our citizens. And if there are expanses in infrastructure, we need to know what those costs are. And if they're happening because of the industry needs to pay for it. If our citizens aren't growing to where we need additional sewer facilities, then, and it's for their discharge, then they need to cough up the money, not the citizens.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kelly Miller. I'm here on behalf of my client, which is a borough medical facility. Unfortunately, due to my contract, I can't specify which one. I work in occupational health and safety, and to piggyback what these fine folks have talked about, any type of chemical that is manufactured in the United States, OSHA requires that the manufacturer make what's called a safety data sheet. The safety data sheet gives you all the information about that chemical, 16 items, including first aid measures, firefighting, what does this chemical do, how is it toxic? So I have compiled 5 known chemicals, and I will give these to you, that are used by data centers in cooling systems, and I've highlighted the pertinent information. The other problem with these chemicals in some of the data centers is they say, we can't tell you what we're going to use because it's proprietary, it's part of our secret inner workings. So if I had to fight to get these 5 chemicals, not saying that these are the chemicals that will be used in this proposed site, but these are similar chemicals. Again, I'll give this to you and invite you to look them up. In identification of this downstream chemical, its intended use as a heat transfer fluid for closed loop systems. In section 2, it gives you the danger. Fatal if swallowed, can cause skin irritation, allergic skin reaction, has to be disposed of in the appropriate manner. But here's what I'd like to point out to you. Accidental release measures. Prevent from entering into soil, ditches, sewers, waterways, and or groundwater. Ecological information spills or discharge to natural waterways is likely to kill aquatic organisms. So not just fish, we're talking vertebrate. Toxicology information is section 11. This is no relevant data regarding carcinogens. They don't know if it causes cancer or not. They can't judge or determine that with how much of this chemical was evaluated. But in the ecological information, which is always section 12, acute toxicity to fish. Disposal. Do not dump in any sewers, on the ground, or into any body of water. All disposal practices must be in compliance. As your supplier, and I want to read this one, I'll give the rest of them to you because I don't want to be redundant. They all say the same thing, but I do want to read this to you. This is how the manufacturer gets around that any legal ramification if people that use this chemical don't use it in its intended manner. And it says, as your supplier, we have no control over the management practices or manufacturing process of parties handling or using this material. This information presented here pertains only to the product as shipped in its intended condition as described in this SDS section. For unused and information for unused and uncontaminated product, they don't give that out. So they're saying, we're only saying this is what it will or won't do as we ship it to the people who want to use it. If they don't dispose of it properly, not my problem. This is how they get around the ramifications. Just want you guys to be aware that no matter what technology they say they're using, we really need to be digging deeper into what chemicals are being put into our water and what that can do, not just to fish. A lot of these, and again, I'm gonna leave all 5 of them up here. I wanted to bring enough copies for everybody. I'm sorry I didn't get to do it in time. But these are extremely bad chemicals that we implicitly say do not release into your groundwater, your sewer systems. They are not safe to do so. So until we get very specific answers from people that are remaining secretive for whatever their reasons are, I just don't think those are good enough answers. Thank you for letting me talk today, and I can just not do something. Thank you.
My name is John Werner. I'm a Monroe resident. I live at 157 South Pitt Street. And I just want to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to us. You know, there's maybe going to be subsequent comments, I don't know. But all of us have been attending Middlesex meetings for months and months and months and have been kind of greeted with hostility and outright contempt from the developers. And that sort of informs the tone of a lot of what we are sharing and why so many of us are, you know, darkening your doorstep at this sewer authority meeting. We, you know, for months now, we have tried to get clarity around ostensible job numbers, you know, how many generators they're gonna put. These are things that are finally coming out and that we can put numbers to. But a concern of people since the beginning is how much water are they gonna use and what's in that water and how hot is it and how much of it is coming to you guys, you know, the Carlisle wastewater treatment facility. And so that, like the fate of that wastewater and how it impacts the borough and the water treatment infrastructure has been at the forefront of everybody's minds because months ago they wanted to expand the Middlesex data center zoning overlay and they wanted to, and all the properties that were proposed surround the borough's wastewater treatment plant in Middlesex. And so that would of course be a distinct data center project had that moved forward. But the nature of the water consumption and what's in it, how hot it is, and how much of it is going to you and when has been just a thing there's been no transparency about. And as the project has moved forward, you know, and people raise these kinds of concerns about like the safety data sheets, what chemicals are in there, what can you tell us about it, you know, without even saying, oh, that's proprietary, we can't tell you anything about that. They just say, well, we don't have that information, we have that later. And, you know, many of us have filed right to know requests with Middlesex Township, and so, you know, they are complying in large part, but there are also times that they're not, things are redacted, and there's just so much about this site that we do not know. And so as a borough resident, beyond the very, very solid, concrete, tangible concerns about what's in the water, how hot is it, how much of it is going our way, how much excess capacity can the borough absorb, we are also just very interested in your deliberations as an opportunity for information to potentially become public and available, because the developers are simply not interested in letting us know what's going on. And so much of people's concern and hostility towards the developers, you know, yes, there is like roiling discontent nationally about data centers, but also so much of it just stems from the ambiguity and again, the contempt and hostility shown to residents who just have concrete questions about how this is impacting where they live. And each data center built, you know, it kind of impacts all of us because of their impact on utility rates and water drawdown from the aquifer and things like that. And so I just really want to thank you guys for listening to us and, you know, not displaying the kind of like usual hostility that's kind of the rule in Middlesex these days.
And thank you all.
Go ahead.
I'm Jessica St. Clair. I live in South Middleton Township. I used to be inspector, so some of you look familiar. I did wastewater treatment, so awesome. I am one of the few people in the government who actually has an idea what this could mean for all of us. So I have also been in some of these Middlesex Township meetings, and something that I would like to make clear to you is their response to me, not me, but the people who are speaking with me, is they do not care what happens to the wastewater because they have a mutual agreement with you, and as long as they meet the regulations that are already in place, you've heard this, they don't care. And as somebody on the flip side of that, I looked and I saw it doesn't look like there's an expiration on your agreement with them. So if you aren't getting information from them now, before they build this, and before you have problems that were happening, I feel like it could impact the wastewater treatment facility. I too have tried to get the information of what is going to be in the cooling water. You probably got it because you're in occupational health and safety. Dow is very quiet about what the chemicals are and what they have a lobby, and they definitely are able to shut down what they're doing. And everything that I have actually found has been very, very toxic. And the other thing that I've heard from them was it's not regulated. There's a big difference between what we're looking for and what it's going to do to, I heard you talking about biosolids in your treatment facility. All it takes is one chemical to kill off all of your bacteria, and then it's gone to the space. So all of these things are meant to prevent the buildup of bacteria and other organisms so that they're keeping their water clean. But then, comes to your plant and it kills everything in your plant, and now you have to restart. And that's what it did a couple of those. Yeah. So the other things that I wanted to say, thank you also. I appreciate that. I was going to say that too. You guys are in a unique position that nobody else is. Because you're in an agreement with them, you have the ability to ask for things that we are not legally allowed to have at this point. If they put it in and they are currently using this agreement that is already in place, if I were you, and you can do whatever you want, but if I were you, I would ask for those things ahead of time. And those things I would hope, like you said, would become public. Because this is one of the few data centers in the United States that's already being built. So we don't even know a lot of the chemicals, and it's not until a spill happens that you're even allowed to ask what chemicals are in there. So you're in a unique position for the entire country to know what is in the cooling systems. So thank you very much for having me, and thank you for listening.
My name is Kyle Gerber. I live at 555 Progressive Road in Middlesex Township. I echo a lot of what's been said. The general sentiment in township meetings is a little disheartening. There's a lot of deferrals. When we ask questions, we're told it's either something that won't be known until we know the end user, until we get paid on the game, or that it's a concern that's being handled by some other entity. But the problem is the process keeps rolling forward, and development is happening without these questions being answered, or at least without us being given answers to these questions. And of course, it affects us. We're bothered by this because this is our lives, it's our environment, think about my children's future. We're concerned about the impact and detriment that this project poses for our future. And so I have a couple questions for you guys. They largely touch on things that have already been mentioned. Do you have a list of the chemicals that they intend to be present in the discharge that they're sending to you guys? Since you're going to be the ones that are processing those out of the water.
I don't know who wants to take that question. So, as far as I know, we do not have specific development plans of their system and the characterization of their effluent that comes into it. So that's my understanding of the situation at this point.
Sure. There's a pre-treatment. First of all, this authority and the boroughs had a contract with Middlesex and Middlesex Authority since 1977 to provide capacity. It's bought and paid for at this point. There's a 1990 pre-treatment program which has been amended a number of times since then. And Middlesex is obligated to comply comply with that pre-treatment program with respect to all of the flow that comes into the plant. So as far as the contract is concerned, once it gets to this item on the agenda, my advice to the board is it's not discretionary. You have an obligation to give this capacity because it's already paid for, and you would be in default of the contract if you didn't do it. They have the township, Middlesex has the obligation of complying with the pre-treatment program. There's stringent requirements and there's some penalties that can be imposed on them. So I'm not familiar with the nature of the chemicals or anything like that, but it must be in compliance with the pre-treatment program. And that's something that can always be modified, the program going forward.
And it's, as he said, we have similar existing, people that put, or entities that put sewage into our system, that they have pre-treatment systems. If they exceed the limits of that, then they get, fined and it's levied and then they get paid back. So it's, as he said, that's the way this has been developed. The authority was put in place going back to the 1970s.
Right. This authority has never reviewed the good idea or bad idea, what the township's doing as far as which project. I see there's sheets on the agenda, there's warehouses out there, and for some other projects that some people don't necessarily endorse. But the agreement is pretty clear. It says, we shall provide a treatment originating anywhere within its respective municipal boundaries of the township. And it's up to the township to designate the project. We haven't had a history of reviewing the project as far as zoning compliance or anything along those lines.
And yet, you guys are the ones that remove pollutants from the water before discharging it back to the creek, yes?
We remove, we treat this system in accordance with our processes that we have in place, yes.
Right, so you have to know what's in the water so that you can effectively remove it. And I guess I would say, you said this is a 1990 amendment. Are the chemicals we're talking about here today, the chemicals that were common in 1990? Is the volume of water that we're talking about here something that is anywhere on par with other uses, other sources that you're receiving effluent from? Is the temperature of the effluent coming from Pax 1 anywhere comparable to other uses? I mean, I see you have sheets on here. I can't imagine sheets is going to be discharging water that's going to be anywhere near as hot as what's coming from Pax 1. Like, these are all things that are different, I believe, from many other uses.
The pre-treatment program was first adopted in 1990, but there's been a number of amendments to that. And I don't know how many. I just know from experience, because I also represent North Middleton Authority, and they have a discharge flow into the borough, and they have to comply with that. And it's regulated rather routinely and subject to change if there's some bad stuff coming in.
So there's no way to assess the bad stuff prior to, it has to be reactionary at this point.
Well, there's a list of bad stuff in the pre-treatment program that you can't do.
Sure.
Now, what that is, you got to get an engineer on that, because I can't answer that one, but what's on the list and what's not on the list, I don't know.
But new bad stuff, it's not on the list, has to be reactionary. We can't use like foresight.
Well, I think if the borough identified something that they didn't want to come in, they could attempt to modify the pre-treatment program.
How are they identifying it though if they're not evaluating the plan? If they're just accepting it?
The plant and the local limits that are in the pre-treatment program are assessed on a routine basis. So we do quarterly sampling, we do quarterly and more than sampling if necessary at all of our industrial users' sites, to verify what's in the wastewater that comes to our plant. And our townships, our neighboring townships that send water to our collection system, ultimately to our plant, they also are required to do sampling at their industrial sites.
So if they receive the list of the chemicals that we've proposed?
You'd have to ask Middlesex. They're the ones dealing with that for the data center.
But Carlisle's the one processing.
So we will coordinate with Middlesex when the time comes for an industrial permit, for a waste treatment permit. We have not gone to that stage. What you see on the agenda today is strictly the capacity request, like Hubert Giller was talking about, and that is just to stipulate that that capacity was previously purchased by Middlesex Township, and that this data center and the volume that they're planning to send to us falls within that limit.
Okay. I have a few follow-up questions pertaining to capacity. The volume we're talking about here, what percentage of the plant's total capacity does that represent? And specifically at seasons of peak load for the plant, how much margin capacity is left after we factor in the volume that's being processed by from Paxloy?
277,000 gallons.
Yeah, per day.
Per day.
So your first question was what percentage of
Of the total plant
the
capacity.
total, so the design capacity, if I take the design capacity, you're looking at 3% of the total design capacity.
Is that assuming you capped out at the 10 million gallons per day or the 7?
9.45, yeah.
So
The 10.
it's, right, which, okay,
If I use 7, I mean, I would divide,
Yeah.
277 divided by.
yeah, just wanting that.
Is there any concern with the temperature of the water that you receive from the plant? I mean, being received from Paxloy?
Again, they would have to meet the pretreatment requirements. So there are temperature controls usually in local ordinances before wastewater enters the pipes. The pipes that this would be entering is first going to be Middlesex pipes.
Okay.
So they would be enforcing those rules.
And you said that would come with the industrial wastewater permit.
Correct.
Is there any rough idea of what time frame that would be, or that's solely on the developer?
Yeah, I don't know at this point.
All right, thank you very much for your time, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you were mentioning that, you do your quarterly sampling. And so I think what's not clear is you're not sampling for everything and all the potential unknown chemicals that are going to be used by the data center in their coolant system. You're going to be sampling for the chemicals that are noted in the ordinance dated on February 28th of 25, correct? So nothing additional. So, for example, PFAS, the only, well, I don't really see that on here at all, but so that would just be for drinking water. So, number one, you're not going to be sampling for these potential dangerous chemicals, and if you were, it would be reactive. So, what we're saying is, figure out what chemicals are going to be in there ahead of time and know their potential harms, and if that's something that you need to update your ordinance with and include in your quarterly sampling. I think it's important to understand that you're impacting downstream, the environment all around, and downstream where people get their drinking water. And this, I was very pleasantly surprised, by the way. You guys need to look at this if you haven't, at the number of chemicals that they are quarterly sampling for. A lot of heavy metals, which they have to do. They want to be a biosolid spreader. That's one of the requirements and things like that. And they do have quite a few other good parameters here, but as I've outlined in this document that I'll get to you guys and everyone has access to, and I think I've sent it to everyone, there's a lot of chemicals that aren't regulated and you're not required to test for them and you don't. Sort of like, the EPA has kicked the can down to get rid of the 4 short chain PFAS. And so now you're just gonna have to comply with Pennsylvania DEPs for a while at your high levels of 14 and 18, right? So I just think, if you think about the toxicities that we're already ingesting because of lack of regulation, and all these, you know, people, and particularly the most vulnerable populations, the baby that's in the mom's belly, as it's developing, is going to be taking on these chemicals, and as young children and everything. And if you're okay with not knowing, sticking your head in the sand to those chemicals and potential health ramifications, I guess that's up to you and your conscience. But I am very concerned. And then I'm also concerned about the ecology and the wildlife around there. This data center at now 1.8 gigawatt is so big that Northern Virginia Data Center Alley has over 350 data centers, and that is only totaling 5 gigawatt. And this one alone is 1.8. And the research that I've done shows that the amount of water that a 1.8 gigawatt evaporative cooling system can use 9 million gallons. You know, who knows how that works out, but sure as heck is a far cry, you know, let's just say it's half of that. Far cry from 400,000. And also the amount that they're asking you for, I thought it was 273, you guys are now saying 277, whatever, of wastewater, that is just not accurate. Now on top of all that, let's just assume that you're doing your quarterly testing. And does that coincide with when they do blowdown? When all these chemicals get flushed in concentration into the wastewater treatment plant and through it and down the creek to the next people who are getting their drinking water? Is there anything that states that you need to coincide your testing with the blowdown? Then also, you're redoing your wastewater treatment plant to be a so that you can be have more efficiency and have cheaper to haul your biosolids. And everywhere else in the country is realizing that the biosolids are contaminants for PFAS. This data center, you can just paint PFAS all over it in every facet. Every single chip, every server, every cable, their flooring, their roofing, you name it, is just washed in it. And I go on to the actual sites where they provide the cooling technology for these data centers, because I don't like to just, you know, do the activism environmental thing. I like to go to like the people who are doing this stuff. And they tell you point blank that no matter how well the system is designed, no matter how well it's maintained, you are going to have leaks. That's gonna, and these are all short chain, which means they're incredibly water soluble. They get into the air. They're gonna rain down on whoever that cloud gets blown on. They're going to circulate through our water, through our aquifers. It's not a great thing. There's just so much. I can't even begin to I could talk to you guys for like 5 to 10 hours easily to tell you stuff. The last thing I guess I want to wrap up with, because I have a whole many questions, is there's this perfect storm going on. This is something you guys kind of like need to really be aware of too. And it was alluded through the one newspaper article about this bacteria. But scientists all over the world are super concerned about antibiotic resistant bacteria to a level of pretty much sheer panic. We currently have 1 million people dying. They're expecting that to go to 2. They're finding that the wastewater treatment plants are the perfect place for this process of antibiotic resistant bacteria and gene spreading. It's a whole thing. And it's also this interconnection with microplastics. So the microplastics are, think of like the nuclei that goes so that water forms and makes a raindrop and falls down, and that's what these microplastics are. Now I know about 95, depending on your wastewater treatment plant, 98% of microplastics gets cleaned out, so it won't go down to the next one. But there's so much vast amounts that there's still thousands and thousands of pounds of it. And so the data centers, even if their biocide isn't technically considered harmful in other uses, or say they're using something similar to what you use, which they're not, but the point is there's going to be so much of it, so much biocides, and those biocides, like we know, bacteria are critical to life. So you're killing those 99% of good bacteria, and you're causing an explosion of the bacteria that are going to become antibiotic resistant. And so that's another thing, I've just started a little bit of researching into this, but that's my new big fear, and this data center is going to be contributing that big time. And you're putting a lot of money and effort into updating your wastewater treatment plant so you can be a biosolid spreader, or you already are. It's just such a catch-22, because those are nutrients that we should use and we shouldn't have to throw in a monofill. But when we have industrial waste coming in that's making it toxic, and we're bioaccumulating it in the food chain, that's just horrible. And it's going to cost you so much money to start having to monofill that. Already it's iffy to me. I would love for there to be regulations that say, hey, before you spread the biosolid, it needs to be tested for PFAS and other things than the handful that there are. But this is going to create a mess for you guys. It really is. So hopefully when I pass this out, I can get the questions answered and not take more time here today. I'm kind of trusting you guys on that. So I really appreciate your time and your consideration and trying to understand the gravity of the potential harms. Water is precious. I've been toying whether to mention anything about this or not. I'll be super brief, but I filed a right to know back in March of 25. At the end of that month, in ancient Chinese medicine, your kidneys are associated with water. I got a severe kidney infection with 3 microorganisms that found a couple of kidney stones. Well, in the last 7 months, and I know it's because I'm working on this stupid data center stuff, I have been infected since March of 2025. I've been on 14 months of antibiotics. Finally got my surgery set up for August 27th. My stone is an inch big. I have another one in the kidney and another one in another kidney. But it's just literally sucking the life out of me. And I just think of the harms to our communities, financially, health-wise. I love that creek so much, you guys have no idea. It's my spirit. And to know that it's going to be destroyed by something that's not necessary is cruel and unusual punishment for everyone who finds peace and serenity in that creek and literally find life from that creek. It's their drinking water. We need to give it care. Thank you. Sorry am emotional. I spoke to the doctor yesterday and I had no sleep and the surgery's gonna be horrible, sorry.
I remember what I forgot, the number of violations, and part of the reason I didn't say it was I don't have an exact number and scientists don't like to lie. So I'm going to say around, in just the last, since October, PAX 1 has had, I think, 80 DEP violations that they're willing to settle on instead of dealing with the problem. And I do understand that, I appreciate, I'm glad you're here, because that's one thing Middlesex doesn't even do, is to bring water here. And I wanted to double check, you guys are actually approving the industrial permit eventually. You haven't seen it yet, but you would. Middlesex would, okay, that's why I wanted to clarify on that. I was just thinking that if the industrial permit has already had the permitter having 83 violations in a span of months, that bad faith be a consideration. I was gonna say, bad faith is a reason that you could go ahead and review somebody before you approve the permit. That's from what I remember seeing. And being on the other side of the DEP.
The violations are gonna continue, guys. It's cheaper to violate a permit than to follow it. It's non-stop, they're gonna keep coming.
I have a question for solicitor. You said that you have already the agreement for the project? You have agreement already with the project?
No, they have agreement to take the water, and just so you know, the pre-treatment, so that you don't keep getting the same questions, and you guys do this, but the pre-treatment means they agreed to give it to them in a certain way, right? They agree that you will receive the water at a certain temperature with a certain things in it, the bacteria is removed before it comes to them, so that's what pre-treatment means, okay? So theoretically, Middlesex, since they own some of the pipes before it gets here, they should already be dealing with it.
Yeah, but they have some agreement right now.
Correct,
with-
yes.
With
Okay.
Middlesex, not with the developer.
Okay, with Middlesex,
We don't
okay.
have any agreements with the developer.
Okay, my question is, because I request the right to know for Middlesex about the if they have a contract with Carlisle, they deny that they don't have any contract because they never provided me the paper by right to know, and that's why I made the appeal. And you said that you have right now that,
I reviewed it in preparation for this meeting. It's dated January 1 of 2014. It's Carlisle Borough Sewer Authority and the Borough, South Middleton, and the South Middleton Township, Middlesex Municipal Authority, and the Township of Middlesex, and North Middleton Authority and the Township of North Middleton, all parties to the agreement.
why they don't provide it when I requested by right to know? The Middlesex.
You can contact their solicitor, they're a friend of mine.
No, that's fine. I just asking you because if you have that paper, they suppose have it too.
Well, I'm sure they have.
But what they don't provide it by right to know. Because if they said that they don't have nothing for Carlisle, but why you have it? What is the difference?
I have it because I asked Mo for
It sounds to me like you can find a
I
great
mean,
deal.
I don't know.
Yeah, I
hold on.
request here, but
I
here
don't know what
don't
your right
provide
to-
me.
I don't know what your right to know scope was. If it would have covered the intermunicipal agreement, then yeah, all of the parties have.
I request in Carlisle too, and never provided. They don't provide
So the right to
nothing.
know, the right to know that I'm familiar with, that the borough received, had to do with anything stating PAX 1. And that agreement is not specific to PAX 1, it's a township agreement. It's an intermunicipal agreement that says, this is how much capacity at our plant each of those municipalities owns.
When I request right to know in Carlisle, in Middlesex, I request a contract with PAX 1 and Carlisle because Rory tell me in May, they have contract with Carlisle. That's why I request right to know, and they supposed to provide me by right to know that contract. But just I wanna make sure, because I have appeal in open record, and I wanna make sure the Carlisle have it, but he don't provide me. And I wanna make sure why.
I'll give you my card afterwards, I'll give you a copy.
Okay. Thank you.
Real brief, I just wanted to provide proper citation for this article. Kate Meadows wrote this article, it's cowboystatedaily.com on July 2nd, 2026, which listed this rare antibiotic-resistant bacteria that was discharged into the wastewater system in Cheyenne, Wyoming, that the developer or the owner of the project did not test for or realize was going in there. Cheyenne actually found it on one of their quarterly sweeps.
Yeah, by the way, I looked it up, I don't have it at the moment, but it isn't one that you would test for that too.
Yeah, that's one
Thank you.
question, please. Has the plant ever had a situation where it was like overwhelmed with capacity, or was unable to process everything that came to it? Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Can I raise, I guess, a question for the solicitor? When I came on board this authority several years ago, my understanding was when the Carlisle sewer system plant, the one that's there, by the creek, was built, the federal monies that were used to build that, it is a regional water treatment plant, and the requirement is that the borough has connections with neighboring townships. That was part of the funding and the requirement when the federal government was trying to regionalize wastewater treatment plants.
I don't know if that was actually a requirement, but I know that's a reality since the 1977.
I mean, it was built with sufficient capacity beyond what the borough would ever need to bring in other communities. Now, I don't know what the law is, I don't know, what the funding documents were way back when, but I just remember that coming up in the discussion. And I think that provides some background of the wastewater treatment plant and its relationship to other communities.
Thank you, that's helpful.
I have a question. My name is Sharon Sephora. I just live 6 blocks down here from here. I just have a question as an ordinary citizen, and I applaud all your efforts. Is there a maximum, did I miss this in the conversation? Is there a maximum discharge that can be accepted from Middlesex Township into the sewer authority daily?
Yes, the total in the agreement right now, as it stands currently, is 1.596 million gallons per day is allowed to come into the treatment plant from any connection point
Okay.
cumulatively.
What happens if that point is reached, say midday? What happens to the water that they want to continue to enter the sewage treatment plant?
So these capacity requests that come before the authority engineer are in essence to review what each of these developments will be sending, and then we track, we have an inventory of what the totals are, so that we know that they're still within that limit.
But just say, for example, there's some kind of unfortunate incident and their discharge exceeds that capacity. What do you do as a sewer authority? Do you shut off the pipes and no more?
So the agreement that Solicitor Gilroy was talking about actually has prescriptive penalties that we can issue.
But then do you accept it and assess the penalties, or do you stop it?
It depends on the situation.
So you would still be required to receive whatever they send to the sewer authority.
I'm sure if it's a ongoing problem where they're exceeding their capacity as per the agreement, they would be shut down.
Alternatively, they could request an
Yeah,
additional.
right, you can purchase more capacity if the borough had the capacity and wanted to sell it.
So you do have the capacity to refuse this if it becomes inordinately larger than what is in the agreement.
We have the capacity to deny anything over the 1.596 million gallons per day that was specified in the agreement. That's right.
Okay, so you do have the capacity to deny that into the system.
If it would exceed that amount.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
How do you measure it? How do you know
All the
it's coming in through a pipe?
All the connections point to the
Yeah.
The Middlesex have, agreement with two more people that they have a sewer service agreement with McNaughton and Fortain Land.
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Well, the authority has in effect a sewer service agreement with both the McNaughton Company and Fortin Lane, and both agreements are legally bounded to their respective successors, so I believe this will apply to the both project for sewer capacity design, construction, and it also speaks to the need for additional capacity in the future if the allowed exceed the current capacity in the 8-inch sewer main on Country Club Road. It appears that an increase in capacity will be needed in the future as this project moves along. So I will be reminded in not calling this to the township attention for future road improvement planning from the both sides to us Route 11. Some of prior discussion with the developer engineering have been around a treatment facility, and we feel this will be down the road. But who knows how fast this project will move?
So Middlesex has to approve the collection and conveyance system capacity, because that is owned and operated by Middlesex. So part of what it sounds like is being discussed in that commentary is the size of the pipe, and whether that would be surcharged by additional flows from the development. And then they would have to increase the size of that pipe, essentially. That is entirely within Middlesex's jurisdiction. If there's a question of treatment capacity, that's the purview of this authority board, and that is where that 1.596 million gallons comes into play. If there was a scenario where they needed to purchase additional capacity to satisfy a developer within the township or a resident, it could be a residential development in the future, it could be a data center, it could be anything. This authority doesn't have jurisdiction over what the origin of that wastewater, but we can say, hey, you've already hit that 1.596 million gallons per day, so if you need more, you can purchase it if the other partners are in agreement and it follows the prescriptive rules, terms of the intermunicipal agreement.
Carlisle is ready, have a capacity for receive all that sewer, water.
Our permitted amount is 7 million gallons per day, as Tamla alluded to earlier. The design capacity is over 9 million gallons. We currently use on average around, our peak average is around 4 million gallons per day. So you can do that math, and the difference is about 3 million on a permitted amount and 5 million on a design capacity.
You previously earlier mentioned that the Middlesex contribution, like the data center contribution, would be 3% of the plant's total capacity, like roughly. How much, I'm very bad at math, I could have done this in my head. How much, that's a considerably larger, but not like overwhelming percentage of Middlesex's 1.596 million. How much of that 1.596 million, like what's the percentage of that Middlesex is already using? Just ballpark.
I don't have those numbers on me right
That's,
now.
yeah, no worries at all.
If you
Just
follow with
curious.
me after, I can probably give you that answer.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if it's 400,000 gallons and it's 4 million total in a day, that doesn't sound like 1%, that sounds like 10%.
270,000.
Yeah,
Your
no, it's
question about-
226 is the sewer capacity that is coming.
Your question about how much is Middlesex existed?
Using in the aggregate,
Yeah, I mean, if it's 275,000, I believe, by 1.5, so that's, it's under 20%.
Yeah.
It's like 15, 10, between 10.
But
and
how much
15.
play do they have overall? Because, there are, the 400,000 gallons a day is like 40% of their reserve water usage. So
After this, they will have approximately 250,000 gallons a day remaining capacity that they can use for other.
okay, thank you.
And the consulting engineer, is that stuff that's been submitted by Tax One, or is that a borough person? The reason I'm asking is because a lot of the figures they've been giving us are wrong. cut out wrong is their consulting engineer, the environmental things. So I'm just curious, is it a borough engineer who's looking at that, or is it stuff you've gotten from PAX one that you were doing today?
That we're reviewing today?
Yeah, the consulting engineer report.
This is their component three, this is their capacity request for the treatment plant. That they sent us the amount. And
The
our-
amount,
our
just
consultant
capacity.
engineer reviews it against the inventory that we know previously.
Gotcha, thank you. Because I want to also know, I hear us complaining to you, and it's not your problem, not your fault, and I do appreciate that you're listening.
It
Thank
is,
you.
insofar as we care about our treatment plan as well. I mean, Melissa will attest to that. She's in there every day dealing with the floods which she calls it, so. We care too.
Yes.
So, we care too.
Thank you.
I know we've done a lot of public comment, and I won't be very complimentary, so my phone line is in space. So Tawanda Stallworth, Courtyard Drive, here in the borough of Carlisle, and you know, I've been to some of the Middlesex Township meetings for maybe some obvious or not so obvious reasons, and I was looking forward to coming this evening because I'm a Carlislean. And I know that when folks, like these folks here who are committed to getting answers and committed to speaking out for their community, they deserve answers and they deserve respect. And that's not what has happened in Middlesex Township. And so I'm very appreciative of you folks for taking the time to answer questions that quite frankly could have and should have been answered by Middlesex Township. They've stopped pretty early on in the process, being able to speak at meetings unless you are a resident. And the retort to that I have is that these issues, as they're related to the Dennis Data Center, are not confined to municipal boundaries, right? Case in point, we're here tonight discussing wastewater from PAX 1. So a lot of things have been said today that I am in agreement with and super proud of this community and folks either on the Facebook group or the Stewards or the Stop PAX 1 project who have not stopped seeking information, not stopped speaking out. And they're here tonight because of their concerns. These are valid concerns. I'm sure you can imagine the other sewer authority meetings that you've been to in this room probably never had to get extra chairs out of the closet. And I think that speaks to how folks are committed to finding answers and working towards solutions. I think what's most disheartening about this project and what we've seen so far, and I understand that you all are limited, right? There are contractual obligations, right? You don't want to be in breach of a contract that you have with Middlesex Township. But I would encourage you to see what that looks like in terms of what are the answers that can be provided, what are the creative problem-solving modalities that you can do between now and the next time that this comes up for consideration and discussion. Because I can tell you, this is not the Netflix documentary, Worst Neighbor Ever, but the folks in Middlesex Township, and I'm speaking specifically about the public servants who are doing less than service to their public, and the developer have been evasive, they've been disrespectful, they have been demeaning, and have not been transparent in their processes. As a result of Hilda's right to know, she shared correspondence that was directly from the developer. And I quote in this email that I can share, he says in this email, and he's talking about the plan, he said, the plan was intentionally discreet as we were concerned about public doing right to know and making it a bigger issue. That's who's at the table in this project. That's who's at the table in this project. And I know that there are statutory limitations to what can be done and all of these things, and And all of these procedures, and according to Phil Niederer, I have to wait till I get to Harrisburg to be able to do anything about those things. But folks, we really have to consider, if these folks are interested and engaged in the community, civically engaged in the conversation, doing the research. None of these folks received a trip down to Northern Virginia, paid for so that they could see what was going on. They've had to do the research on their own. So I'm only rising to say, yes, your agreement is with Middlesex Township. These are the shenanigans that are happening in Middlesex Township. And I trust you all, because you all are Carlisle folks just like me, to do whatever you can do, to do anything possible, to be able to provide folks with answers, be able to get us some information, so that we can engage in discourse and dialogue, and be able to solve the problems that are in front of us related to this data center. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anybody else? That wants to
Wait,
come forward?
I have one other quick comment, is you may wanna reach out to Northern Virginia's sewer authority to find out what type of extra processes and testing that they do down there to ensure that their water is safe when they release it back to the public. I've lived down there for 20 years. I'm pretty sure there are some extra processes that we paid for through our taxpayers that they took before they could release the water back into the public.
Thank you.
Just a caveat to that, that's only gonna be covering what's regulatory required, still test for, so, but yes, it's going to be a business.
I would just very briefly off of that, developers love to take people to Loudoun County. They love to show people Ashburn, Virginia, because there's a sense that Data Center Alley is like a regulatory triumph. I would just encourage people to look into what's going on in Prince William County, where there is not a constrained like 800 plus acre area where millions of dollars of property taxes are leveraged. Instead, you see massive, mammoth, sprawling campuses like we are getting in Middlesex.
And I will piggyback further on that. My name is Brian McDermott. I live here in Borough 2. But I grew up in Loudoun County, Virginia, which we talked about a couple times. And one of the coolest things about growing up in that area was the Washington and Old Dominion rail trail, which goes from Purcellville, Virginia, all the way to DC. And so the western section of it, Purcellville to Leesburg, is pretty much horse country. And then you go from Leesburg to Ashburn, which is largely residential, but once you get to Ashburn, there used to be large stretches of meadow, which was really nice. So you could see houses around somewhat and roads. I've gone back a couple of times over the years, and each time I go, those stretches of meadow that used to just be birds and trees and such, it's all overdeveloped, including data centers. And I find it odd that like Loudoun County is used as an example as a regulatory triumph, and it's like the formerly idyllic region has been just destroyed by these things. And you guys have an opportunity to, I know that there's contracts involved that go back, you are just sewage authority and stuff, but I mean, there's a national groundswell against this stuff. Nobody wants this except for oligarchs and tech surveillance companies and people who frankly suck, who have no love for nature, no love for people, no love for community. They have love for the dollar. So I encourage you, you have an opportunity to be a wrench in the machine, to mess up the proliferation of this as far as you can for a small amount of power. You see in New York State, they're doing a moratorium on these being built. I have a feeling that's going to set the example for the rest of the country. So doing everything you absolutely can to hobble this is, in my opinion, a good thing. And that's obviously good.
I just want to read you PAX 1's conclusion for their environmental assessment. PAX 1 will result in unavoidable and irreversible environmental changes through the use of non-renewable sources, permanent loss of farmland, vegetation, habitat, natural hydrology, while mitigation measures and thoughtful design minimize impact where possible. The conversion of the site to a data center campus commits it to long-term environmental trade-offs. These effects are inherent to the project's scale and function and will endure beyond the operation of its lifespan. There's another document I have that says forever. Forever. And it doesn't belong there. There's a wetland there. There's identified endangered species there. There's a hydrology for one of the few areas in the Ordovician shell for percolation to recharge. There's a bald eagle nesting pair, and it's just gonna take an onslaught of violations and destructions, and there's a whole lot more where they're very specific about exactly how that's going to occur. With the electricity, the diesel fuel, the rare earth elements. Imagine I can't get rid of this computer without great grief. And they're gonna replace acres and acres and acres, 75 foot tall, every 2 to 3 years. Where is that going?
Okay, any other public comments?
If you do want to go to Prince William, I can give you a map of where all the data centers are.
I haven't been in Northern Virginia since I was stationed at Fort Belvoir about 30 years ago, but it's not the same, I know that, it's dramatically.
And they're next to the college, they're next to the concert halls, they're next to schools, they're next to everywhere. Every corner you pass through in Prince William, on the western corridor, there's data centers.
Okay, if we're complete then with comments, let's continue on the agenda. And the next item on the agenda is for the approval of meeting minutes from the 21st of April meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those? Okay, do I have a second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, so those meeting minutes are approved then from last meeting minute. Report from the borough, we have the expenditure report.
Yes, sir. All I have to report is that in the second quarter of 2026, the authority incurred $800 million in solicitor expenses, and year-to-date as of the end of June, that totaled $620 in expenses.
Okay. Any questions from the board on the expenditure report? Okay. The treatment plant report, Melissa.
I don't have much. The average monthly flow for April was about 2.82 million gallons. For May, it was about 2.74 million gallons, and June, it was about 2.6 million gallons. Since the last time we spoke, we began April, so since the weather broke, we've been doing our annual tank cleanouts and PMs. I have an operator who just received his Class A operator's license back in May. Also back in May, we had several borough council members and a handful of public works employees that toured the treatment plant that was given by our lead operator, Tony Weiss.
So you heard what the average flow was, that was part of the discussion there, and I don't know when our normal peak flows, I would assume it's like in the fall or the other time of the year when Dickinson College is inhabited and other things are, but that's a fairly typical flow rate that they've experienced. Thank you, Melissa. Any questions from Melissa? Okay, consulting engineer then, we've got 3 items for consideration here. The first is for the capacity request for sheets rebuild.
So this is a rebuild of an existing sheets located at 1098 Harrisburg Pike at Wolf's Bridge Road intersection. Project includes a new convenience store, gas station, and car wash, This is a rebuild of an existing facility. The new facility is expected to produce additional wastewater. The requested new additional capacity is 1,725 gallons per day. We've reviewed this request. Capacity is available in the Carlisle system to convey and treat flows. The request is in accordance with Middlesex Township's capacity allocation and treatment plan. Therefore, we recommend execution of written certificate of capacity.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Do we have a motion to move forward to approve that?
I'll move
Okay,
that
Curtis,
we approve.
and a second? All right, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Nobody opposed, so that's requested and approved. The second one is the discussion and consideration of treatment capacity request for Waterford Drive lots 17 through 20, and that's in Silver Spring Township.
This is a consolidation of 4 lots on Waterford Drive. The opposite side of the Carlisle pipe from the All Pro trailer. Project includes consolidation of 4 lots and construction of an office building and 2 retail restaurant strips. Development is projected to produce 3,270 gallons a day. We have reviewed the request. Capacity is available in the Carlisle system to convey treatment flows. The request is in accordance with the township's capacity allocation and treatment plan and recommend execution of written certification of capacity.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have questions? Okay, go ahead.
I'll note the last time we did something on Waterford Drive was Silver Scoop ice cream parlor.
Okay,
I moved to approve it.
okay, do I have a second? All seconds, okay, all in favor? Aye. Nobody opposed? Nobody opposed, so that motion carries as well to approve that request. And last but not least is the discussion and consideration of the treatment capacity request for PAX 1 out of Middlesex Township.
So this is a 693.4 acre site along the Country Club Road, approximately 1.17 miles north of Harrisburg Pike in Middlesex Township. The road is used as a data center complex. Development is projected to produce a total of 273 gallons per day of wastewater flow, which includes 32,000 gallons per day of domestic sanitary sewage, so that's the office space, restrooms, those facilities, and 241,000 gallons a day of industrial wastewater process pool. We reviewed this request. Capacity is available in the Carlisle system to convey and treatment flows. Request is in accordance with the township's capacity allocation and treatment plan. Recommend execution of the sewage facilities planning module component 3. And this, it's a little different form because of the size of the request. So there's 3 different signature spots in that. It's a little bit different information. Again, that would leave Middlesex Township with approximately 250,000 gallons per day of remaining capacity reserve.
Okay, any discussion or questions or anything from the board?
I have a question. If we voted no on this, we'd be sued.
I suspect so. You'd be in violation of the agreement because you are contractually obligated to approve the capacity anywhere in the township and now, whether you like the idea of the development or not.
That's what I was going to say, is that I agree with a lot of the things that everyone said. I'll say that, but the question that we have to answer here is Middlesex Township has requested this 270,000 gallons. There is sufficient capacity in the system to handle it, and our responsibility is to approve the capacity request and not what that capacity request is coming from. I mean, we might not
Or
like
what the constituents of it
is coming
what
from,
is,
15 new, million square foot warehouses, we wouldn't like that either, or, 25,000 new homes going up or something. So the question is the capacity request and not what the capacity is coming from. And I know that's a hard one to swallow. But I think it's the heart of the
That's
matter.
right, and that's why you're just certifying that we have the capacity. That's what we're saying.
That's where it's difficult for everyone to stomach, I think, but that's where we are at with this thing. It's not in our power to stop this.
One more comment on that. None of us here are elected. People who are elected have already approved this. how are your discussions going with them?
Bad.
It's a political issue. It's not really a technical issue, it's a political issue.
It's public health as well.
And it speaks to the honesty of the developers. They've lied to us multiple times. What's to say they're not lying to you?
No, they absolutely are.
I think one of the issues, you know, is they've requested this 275,000 gallons thereabouts. They can't come and say we need another 500,000. We don't have the capacity for that. They don't have the capacity to think. So, you know, if they're trying to shortcut or, you know, bamboozle us and say they're gonna need more later on, well, there's no room.
So
And that's the bottom line.
that leaves the question of where is that waste gonna go? Into the street, illegally. Or through one of these other two sewer systems that Hilda mentioned, so that
We
can't
have,
handle it.
we have metal sewer company, and we don't clear where metal sewer company discharge the water. The Middlesex said they have own plan, but now today, I win the appeal. They have to provide me documentation for metal sewer company, because the open record determination, they have the information for metal sewer. Now, you know, if metal sewer discharge or use Carlisle too. They drop the water in the creek. The DEP found the metal sewer discharge water, dark sewer water in the creek.
They failed to get a permit and failed.
I think because of all of the deception that has been uncovered by this group, that it would behoove the authority to do an additional step of due diligence to confirm that number, and to get whatever additional information can help you to make an informed decision with respect to the capacity.
But if we are approving 275,000 gallons a day, that is what they are legally allowed to put into the Carlisle sewer system,
So,
correct?
under the intermunicipal agreement.
From this thing. And that takes up,
Under the intermunicipal agreement,
in middle,
it stipulates that it spells out the exact reserved capacity for each partner in the agreement. And it says Carlisle hereby grants and confirms unto each party the right during the term of this agreement to discharge sewage waste into the treatment plant in the maximum quantities noted above, originating anywhere within its respective municipal boundaries or outside of such boundaries as previously agreed to or that may be agreed to in the future by the parties hereto. So the purpose of this board is strictly to state, per the engineering certification, that this project falls within that total maximum capacity that Middlesex already owns. By denying that, you would be saying that they don't have it, and that would be incorrect, because the engineers already
It would
assessed
be
it.
conjecture of what we think they could do, but we have no basis to be able to do that.
Right,
So-
and as far as after the fact, that's why we have metering, sampling to hold them to requirements, whether it's the volume or the spring usage.
I appreciate the like contractual and kind of like statutory constraint that you guys are operating under. I think some of our concern comes from the developers said that they would take 400,000 gallons a day water, but that they reserve the right to take more in the future. And the conditions under which they reserve the right to take more are sort of ambiguous, and they have kind of gone back and forth in public meetings. Justin Ross, of Living Civil Engineering, who is one of the PA Data Center partners developing the site, says expressly that 400,000 gallons corresponds to the entire build out. Some of their documentation kind of suggest that we have access to collectively through right to know requests sort of suggests that number is like a little wishy-washy and maybe not entirely accurate, which is where some of our sentiment is.
I think part of the onus is on Middlesex Township.
Yes.
If they agree to, you know, a sewage discharge that exceeds, you know, the agreement and the capacity of the plant, I mean, shame on them. I mean, they can't do that.
100%, and the reason I'm saying that specific point about the water draw, because what
I hear what you're saying about concerns with the aquifer and
that's not what I'm saying.
and the water and everything, but
hold on,
unfortunately, that's not.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying. I understand that's not material. My point was simply that longer term, if they in fact take more like water than 400,000 gallons a day, we recognize that this would, if they in fact violate the amount they're requesting now or request more subsequently, that this will come before you because, you know, they are allowed to purchase more water capacity, and we would just, at that time, if that happens, I think just putting this out there now, we would love if you guys would consider all of these various considerations if 2-3 years down the road as they build this facility out and they're requesting more water than Middlesex's total allotment, that, you know, like this conversation be present in your mind when that happens. That's all.
Maria, with what you just read, it's my understanding then that the two additional wastewater plants that she mentioned would be fall under the municipal agreement purview, correct?
I think what Hilda was talking about is Middlesex's infrastructure. That has nothing to do with the boroughs. Right.
Middlesex and the Country Manor West, right?
The what? I'm sorry.
The wastewater,
Yeah.
Country Manor West, that's not, is that Middlesex?
That's Middlesex.
It's a Middlesex, but they said it's not connected to Middlesex. But open record determination today, they have provided a paper because suppose they connect to Middlesex, but they don't want provider because it's approved. The water is, the plant is connected to Middlesex, but they don't want provider paper.
So my thing is kind of where I think John was going. They're going to be needing more water and wastewater, the wastewater discharge. And so do you guys have a guaranteed way of documenting that and making sure that they're not pushing it through somewhere else illegally and then getting it in, you know, down into the creek? I mean, like, I'm worried just looking at the maps and stuff that they're just gonna put in sink a pipe down in there and then have it go, you know, like you can't even see it, and it's gonna go underneath the creek, but of course, you know, get into the creek. Like, what's to stop something like that? What's to stop?
Middlesex enforcement. The borough can't go out there and start inspecting that property.
They don't do anything.
So it's also a fact that it's a factor in these conversations that we have other municipal partners here.
Yeah.
So they all have land development going on as well. When we talk about increases in reserved capacity being traded at some point in the future, like you were talking about, John, that's not limited to Middlesex.
Right.
That's any of those other partners as well that might be approaching their ceiling at any given time. We don't have a crystal ball, so we don't know what it's going to look like. We will address that as it comes, and I hear what John's saying as far as for the board to consider this conversation down the road. But that would not just apply to Middlesex, that would apply to all of our municipal partners.
And so it makes sense, like legally, why you guys, you know, can't stop the allocation because it's there. So thinking about some of our concerns, are there areas where you can put in and install protections that could be a potential stopgap? Not that you necessarily are saying we would, but just afford you that opportunity to make that decision, yes or no, because right now I'm hearing, even though maybe you don't want to say yes, you have to. So is there something that you can do with the other permitting process or the other factors that of concern that you could put in that stopgap that could at least give you the ability to make a decision.
They're obligated, if we have the capacity and Middlesex has paid for it, they're obligated to approve it.
So, but like, is there nothing that, you know, could target the, content? So
Well,
not
sure,
just the
that's a
capacity.
pre-treatment program, and, you know, I would think borough staff might take a hard look at the pre-treatment program in light of what some folks are saying.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting at.
And we do also have to remember that DEP does get involved often, and sometimes they'll go back and take a look at different things, because I see that all the time. I mean, I'm not in the wastewater, I'm in the land development, and I see a lot more, like, all my forms are changing monthly. Because DEP sees that something's changed, they need to change it, and I have to go on there monthly. I had one form changed 3 times in 1 month, because they're seeing things that they missed. So I see them constantly, so I can see this happening.
Yeah, like when I looked up trying to just isolating PFAS alone, it looked like there might be some, testing for the wastewater. I couldn't tell if it was the pre-treatment or coming out of Carlisle, or, you know, like the wastewater treatment itself, or what, or if that's installed, you know, if it's active right now and enforced, or if it's just something they're wanting to do. And, you know, there's I don't know, there's a lot of ambiguity that I'm not real sure. So I'll send you guys the questions and the information I have on that.
Well, let me tell you the truth. My community have a problem with the Worcester water plant. Carlisle, before approved, that's only the suggestion. Before approved, have to verify if the metal sewer is not connected to PAX 1 and drop that water until the connection after Carlisle approved. Because that plant have a problem for discharge. DEP found a pipe into the creek. That company tried spot for drop sewer water. You approve that, but after you approve, PAX 1 can do anything because they have agreement with different people. They can connect. You have to verify before approve. I know the PAX 1 have something undercover. They need Carlisle approved sewer pipe or connection for continue do whatever they want to do undercover. That's why MTMA don't want provider any paper. You know what is any paper? The Rory said in the communicator by open record, they don't have nothing. It's impossible. It's impossible. They don't have nothing about PAX 1 for sewer. Carlisle that have to verify everything before approve. Because after approve, we can do anything.
One of the requests at one of the meetings way back was through DEP to put a pipe under the creek down by the bridge. And my husband's an engineer, and I'm like, why are they putting a sewer pipe going toward the mountain instead of toward Route 11? Like, are they, why, and it's going toward her community, toward the country manor. Like, is the sewer crossing the creek and then going through the meadows and then coming to the sewer plant? It was just kind of, I mean, I'm so novice, but I'm like, why are they requesting to put this pipe under the creek toward the trailer park instead of pushing the sewer up the hill? I'm assuming the pipes go on the opposite side of the creek, but I don't know the plans. I don't know how all the piping is, but that might be something to you guys may know and wonder, ask.
And in the map, my community is not up here, like anybody live in there.
Folks, those are Middlesex issues, the design and where the pipes are laid.
No, it's not the design.
This
They
board
try
has-
to cover something.
the board has no authority on that at all.
Okay.
Yeah, and the layout of a sewer system on a site like that is pretty detailed, pretty complex, as this gentleman would tell you. You know, you have to overcome topography, you have to, in some cases, put in pumps, you know, to pump it instead of going by gravity. There's all these other issues that are dealt with when you design a system like that for a large industrial site like that, so.
I mean, the sewer, one of the main sewer lines goes almost all the way to Carlisle Valley High School. I mean, that's how far out the Carlisle sewer system has piping. But that's the responsibility of the townships there. And that's, you know, when we vote on capacity requests, that they're tapping into that to send back to the Carlisle wastewater treatment plant. I mean, but we don't control
How the pipes
the
are.
piping. It's any other townships.
Can you guys fathom a guess as to why the president of the Lower Susquehanna Riverkeeper would make a statement that there's not a wastewater treatment plant in Pennsylvania that's going to be currently equipped and ready to handle wastewater from these large-scale co-location data centers?
No, they should not make a guess on why he's saying that. That's what I recommend the board. That's just
And then,
not even on the agenda. You know,
So-
the issue is to vote on that one limited request.
So anyway, any other comments here, because we do need to move on.
just has Tax One given you guys money to update the wastewater system?
No.
6 million.
We have no interactions with PAX
Right.
One, all of our interactions are direct with
Township.
Middlesex Township.
Okay,
They
so
are
then
the-
Tax One would give it to Middlesex would give it to you guys.
Middlesex is paying a portion of the expansion or something. I read the newspaper.
Okay, so do we have a motion on this capacity request for Tax One?
I don't like to, but I will move with.
Okay, we're in a second? Good. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the motion carries and the capacity request is approved.
Well, the capacity.
Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda is a report from the solicitor.
Nothing to report other than, I guess our costs were part of your major budget last time as far as the report. And Mo contacted me early on, so I reviewed in preparation, so that I'm glad I did, so I could answer a lot of questions for you folks. And, you know, but, you know, we did a lot of review on that and nothing else to report, thank you.
Thank you for coming, because one of your pre-predecessors that was here for like 40 years.
John Fowler.
He was a fixture on this authority for
Yeah,
many years. I think he was here when they actually drafted that, John, and he just retired a couple years ago, so. Anyway, thank you very much.
Happy to be here, like working with appointed volunteer officials. And I compliment you on your enlightened time to schedule meetings. I go to too many meetings that start at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, we moved that actually not too long ago.
They're separate, just for color.
Kind of made sense to all of us, so appreciate it.
Thank
you. Any old business to bring up at this meeting? Anybody? Okay, and there's no other new business, I would assume there's plenty of input from the community here and folks from Middlesex Township. We appreciate we really do appreciate your comments and your concerns. They're all valid, and you communicate them very well. We'll take them under advisement for the, again, we have a very limited scope of what, we have to stay in our lane, and our lane is to approve the capacity request at this point in time. There'll be other things that we'll get involved in later on as this project goes forward, but we do appreciate you attending and bringing these things to our attention, and we wish you the best of luck and everything else, so. If nobody else has any other comments, and this concludes today's meeting, thank you.
Thank you, guys. No, they did take your post.
Thank you so much.
Email me and I'll be glad to get that.
Okay, thank you so
Thank you,
much.
guys. Kim, I'm sorry you didn't make your event then. Your was closer.
Do you need help putting these chairs away?
Actually,
Thank you guys very much.
Good luck. You guys have some, you obviously did some homework. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
I got like 4 or 5 documents. You said there's 3 just for the one.